60 Minutes Rewind.
If Bill Clinton has learned one lesson during his first 9 months in office, it's unless you do business with Bob Dole, you may not be able to do business at all. Whether it's challenging the president's economic stimulus package or the president's budget or the president's health care program, the minority leader of the Senate has taken center stage in Washington. This week he was in the spotlight once again, threatening to tie the president's hands on sending troops to Haiti. At 70, Bob Dole, the second most powerful man in Washington, is at the top of his game, cutting deals, wielding power, and having the time of his life. This is Bob Dole's idea of having fun. Pounding away on the treadmill and watching C-SPAN. Gotta keep moving, get those legs in shape, clear out those arteries, get ready for business. And these days, like the Energizer Bunny, he's everywhere. Face the nation, meet the press, Brinkley. He doesn't hunt, doesn't fish, or play poker except in politics. There's no private Bob Dole, only Senator Bob Dole. And he has seen it all. Watergate, the Vietnam War, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, and now Clinton.
The biggest rap on you is that you're much more interested in partisanship and gaining political advantage than you are in doing what's right for the country. You know, Senator Gridlock.
The fact that you are sort of the party leader, it's like you're the lightning rod, and if the lightning's going to strike now and then, and sometimes it shouldn't, sometimes it may not be deserved, but that's the way it goes. Meet Senator Judd Gregg from New Hampshire right behind you.
To most Republicans, he has taken a beaten, divided, and demoralized party and kept it from becoming irrelevant, largely with his caustic wit and his mastery of the legislative process. To most Democrats, he's the dark prince of American politics, a political hatchet man with the most famous mean streak since Richard Nixon.
I think they know that if they got off pretty easy this time.
Democrats rarely get off easy with Bob Dole. In the 1976 vice presidential debate, he blamed them for every war in the 20th century, along with the deaths of 1.6 million American boys. And he doesn't confine the barbs to Democrats. There was his less than gracious concession to George Bush following the 1988 New Hampshire primary.
I think sometimes you show your normal human being that you do have a little feeling. You're not always smiling, so, stop lying about my record. Don't do it again. You get mad.
Bob Dole gets mad a lot. Whatever else he may be, Dole is human, sometimes to a fault. In a city of carefully filtered, calculated conversations, he says what's on his mind, even if it gets him into trouble. Sometimes he seems unable to control himself. It's what makes him perhaps the most interesting and complex figure in American politics.
You want me to sign that for you?
But ask anyone in Washington what makes him tick, and you get one answer.
You sort of hold that down for me.
Watch him sign an autograph or shake hands. It's World War II, the injury, the wound that still causes pain.
You always keep pen or rolled up paper or something in that hand. Why is that?
I guess it's sort of a protective thing. It's sort of a signal to people, that hand's occupied. I don't know if it makes any difference, but it's just gotten to be a habit now. I assume when I die, there'll be a pen in my hand. If you look in the casket, I hope so. If anybody's listening, I want that done.
By now, the war wound is a familiar story. But to get the full impact, you have to go home with Bob Dole to the house he grew up in and still owns, to Russell, Kansas, 1,300 miles from the marble halls of Washington.
People know you well enough here. If they think you're getting a little highfalutin or whatever, why, they won't mind telling you. So.
He grew up here on the wrong side of the tracks in the middle of the Depression, a local hero and star athlete who went off to the University of Kansas wanting to be a doctor and hoping that the war in Europe would end before he got there. It didn't. 2 months before Germany surrendered, he was assigned to some of the heaviest fighting in the war. Just days after this picture was taken in Italy's Po Valley, Dole was hit with machine gun fire while trying to rescue his radio man.
Did you realize how badly you were wounded?
No, I didn't have any idea. I just knew I couldn't get up, and I couldn't. I remember raising my head a time or two.
His right shoulder was shattered, his neck broken. The doctors were convinced that if he lived, he would never walk again. He lost a kidney, and nearly died twice from high fevers and blood clots in his lungs. He spent more than 3 years in Army hospitals, the longest, loneliest years of his life.
I remember my dad coming up one Christmas. He had to stand all the way on the train. The trains are so crowded. Got up there, his ankles are swollen. But he made it.
When the Army sent him home for good, he was still far from whole. He had gone from 194 pounds to 122. His right arm was useless, and there was little feeling in his left hand.
It must have been incredibly difficult having left an athlete, a basketball star, a football star, and to come back in the condition that you came
Sort
back.
of a basket case, yeah. It's kind of hard to adjust, and you don't know what, you don't know how you're being accepted by people. Obviously they are sorry it happened, and there's pity and a lot of goodwill, particularly in this town.
It was the people of this town who made it possible for Bob Dole to adjust. They raised $1,800 to send him off to Chicago for 7 more operations as he willed himself back to health. But there were long bouts with depression, best described perhaps in Richard Ben Kramer's book on the 1988 campaign, in which he describes a despondent Bob Dole worried over the prospects of living the rest of his life a cripple. Kramer wrote,
How could he ever let that worm bore to his center? What the hell would he do then? Play bridge all day like the guys in the ward with his cards held in a special rack? And after that, what would he do? Sell pencils on Main Street? Sometimes he could actually see himself on Main Street, Russell, with a wheelchair and a cup. That was his private vision of hell, the spur to get him up to try again.
Yeah, I think that's fairly accurate. I remember the first time I looked in the mirror, I couldn't believe it was me. They got me out of bed one day and the bathroom door was open. There was a mirror on the far wall of the shaving cabinet. I couldn't believe that was Bob Dole. And so I didn't look in the mirror. I still don't look in the mirror, except to shave. So I guess it just sort of sticks with you.
Why don't you look in the mirror?
Well, I do have to put my T-shirt on, but not before. It's just why look in the mirror? It's, I think I've faced reality, but just something, I don't need to be reminded of it every day. So, but selling pencils was not really what I had in mind. I don't remember when it started, but one day you get up and you say, okay, let's get out of here. Let's start thinking about the future instead of the past, and maybe Bob Dole can do something else.
The story will continue after this.
It turned out to be politics, a profession kind to war heroes. The state legislature, county attorney, Congress, the Senate, 3 runs at national office. But not even Bob Dole would deny that the pain is still there.
One of the things people say about Bob Dole, and they've been saying it for years, is he's got a real mean streak.
Yeah.
And some people say it's because of what happened in 1945, 1948, that there's still a bitterness about it, a resentment that this horrible thing happened to you and that you've never quite been able to
deal with it.
Yeah,
I've never been able to determine that. I mean, I've said things that probably I shouldn't have said, but I don't think anybody who's ever known Bob Dole said he has a mean streak. I mean, it's pretty much the obvious. I don't think I'm a mean person.
There are people that think you're still bitter about it. It's a driving key aspect of your
I
personality.
think I'm very competitive. I mean, my view is if I hadn't been competitive in high school and thought I was a pretty hotshot athlete, I wouldn't have been back on my feet again. I've been out there selling pencils. But I had my parents and everybody in this town sort of rallied around me, and it seemed to me that I had to prove something. Well, here we are again.
And there's no doubt he's still trying to prove it, whatever it is. While Dole continues to cross swords with the Clinton administration over foreign policy, he's been generous in his praise for the First Lady and her efforts on health care, promising bipartisan cooperation.
There are so many more areas of agreement.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get credit
Still got a
for,
few hang-ups, but
What are the big ones, you think?
Well, we're going to talk about that.
I don't want to debate those here, 'cause we wouldn't have any fun later.
No,
Yeah,
Do you approve of the strong role that the president's given her in his administration?
certainly. I'd be happy to waive the rule or introduce a piece of legislation that says she couldn't be appointed to the cabinet because of the so-called nepotism statute. My view is that if the president has a role for the spouse, whether it be a man or a woman, that person should not be inhibited because of that.
Dole is used to dealing with strong women. After all, he's married to one. Elizabeth Dole, who's his second wife, held cabinet positions in both the Reagan and Bush administrations. Currently, she runs the American Red Cross. Could waiving that nepotism rule eventually benefit the Doles?
Well, you never know. I mean, if Elizabeth gets elected president, she might appoint me to something.
Whether there ever is a President Dole, Mr. or Mrs. in the White House, Dole's relationship with the present occupant has at least become more civil. It began this summer when former Democratic Party Chairman Bob Strauss, one of Dole's closest friends, arranged a supper-time summit at a public restaurant in Washington.
Is this the beginning of a wonderful friendship?
No, it's the middle of it.
In the middle of it? He's a pretty tough customer.
Tough customer, but he's smart, worthy adversary, and I think we'll be allies on a lot of things. We have been already.
What do you think of President Clinton?
I think he's pretty bright, smart, articulate. I think he's doing a little better job now.
But in a way, don't you want to see his policy fail? Don't you want to see the economy not get better so the Republicans can pick up a majority in the Senate in '94 and maybe
I
the
guess,
White
you know,
House?
I guess sometimes, and you say, well, Jiminy, if he does this and it works, it's going to be curtains for us. I mean, you think about those things, but in the real world, you don't dwell on that every day. You have to go out and do what you do, and he does what he does, and then somebody measures at the end of the year, the end of the month, or whatever.
But you can't sit here and honestly tell me that you want President Clinton and the Democrats to succeed.
I want him to do a good job.
But you don't want him to succeed.
Do I want him to be reelected? See, that's the difference. I want him to do a good job but not be reelected. Now, that's the difference. That's the bottom line. That's what politics is all about.
It's all about plotting strategy, something he does from the balcony next to his office, overlooking what he calls the second best view in town. The second best view in town.
This is the best view in town, right?
Which, of course, begs the question, would a then 73-year-old Bob Dole make one more run for the White House in 1996?
I'm a very vigorous person in good health and alert mentally. And if I still feel that way after the '94 election, I might have plans for '96.
You still want to be president?
I think so.